But let's move on. Let's start looking at the Gulf cooperation countries. They're more water stressed than many other Arab countries, not least because they lie in an arid region, but there's not many big transboundary rivers that flow into them, unlike the case of Egypt or Syria or Iraq or Mauritania. They also have a rapidly increasing population, they're urbanizing, and yet they've succeeded in securing a water supply to almost their entire population. They've almost 100% access to safe and affordable drinking water supply. What is also interesting is that they import typically 80 to 90% of the food they consume. And it's estimated that the Gulf Cooperation Council countries' reliance on food imports will continue in the future, and that the import bill will rise to about $50 billion by the end of this year, compared to just under 30 billion just 4 years ago. The next questions are, how did the Gulf Cooperation Council countries achieve the current levels of water security? And could we say that the GCC has high water security already? And under the water scarcity challenge and rising food demands and bills, how do you perceive the interaction between water security and food security? And that question is for Professor Waleed Khalil Zubari. Professor, over to you. 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Well, to directly, address your question, if we have a very high level of water security, the answer is yes and no. But before I say why it's no, let me explain a number of things that I think has to be explained to illustrate my opinion. We have to define actually what do we mean by water security and what are its dimensions. And water security has many meanings and to different countries, and it changes across scales from the local city to the country to the group of countries, like we can see. A water security for Egypt, which has shared water resource and huge population and agricultural, economy, is completely different from water security for a country like Bahrain, which is completely urban, with no agriculture and has very limited groundwater, which is fossil and depends on desalination plant. But having said that, there are an agreement on that what water security would mean to us, and there are at least now we can say that there are at least 4 main dimensions for water security. The first one is actually what you have just said, to provide basic water needs in terms of water supply and sanitation. The second one is the second dimension is how much we are able to cope with emergency conditions, like what happens in case that we are having our desalination plant stopped at any time due to any pollution in the Gulf. The third dimension is how much we are protecting our ecosystem, and the fourth one is how we are managing our water resources. Are we managing them efficiently? Unfortunately, that dimension of water security, which is the last one, which is how are we managing our water resources, is being overlooked most of the time. So if I'm going to talk about the main challenges that the GCC are facing in terms of water security, I can say that in terms of supplying urban water supply, providing water supply to the urban population, they have really achieved a very good marks in terms of water security. But if we look at the other issues that are related with the water management system, that you will find that the water security is really, really, really fragile in terms of many dimensions that we have not captured or addressed yet. The first one is that although that we are having 100% water supply achievement, which is SDG 6.1 and also SDG 6.2, the cost associated with providing this type of service, or this very high service, is really enormous. That's because of the general blanket subsidies for the water supply system, and which leads to a very low cost recovery. And this is really put a heavy burden on our general budget, which can be liberated to other issues like health and education and and capacity building. The water supply systems also have a lot of externalities because we are relying on desalination plants. They are energy intensive. They are actually eating up a lot of our energy, which is the main source of income for our countries. They have also some environmental externalities that are, like air pollution or greenhouse gases emissions, as well as polluting the sea, which is also a very important source for our food security in terms of fish stock and so on. So the first issue is that we are having an enormous cost associated with this water supply system that we have to reduce. And the thing is that also that we have desalination introduced in the region since the 1950s, we are still importing this technology, and it doesn't add anything or very limited added value to our economies. And that's a major strategic problem that we have really to look at. The other issue, and to mitigate this or to lower this, threat of water security, we have really to invest in our desalination. We have to have extensive R&D investment in desalination and try to localize this technology in the region. The other issue is that we are having our groundwater resources, which are majority of our fossil groundwater, are being deteriorating in a very fast, or being mined in a very fast rate. And there is a major concern for us that what all these major agricultural investments with the fate of those after the depletion of this resource. And even for those, some of the countries have some renewable groundwater resources. These are being really overexploited and depleted in a fast rate. Now, what should we do with this situation? We have to rationalize our agricultural consumption and only grow the thing that can, these agricultural policies have to look at the limited water resources before they are being planned or formulated. The other thing that also is a major concern, or actually touches upon the water security, is that the large amount of treated wastewater that are unused. We have one of the most modern advanced tertiary treatment system for our sanitation water, but our reuse rates are very low. If we can utilize this water, and this is actually a major lost opportunity under the scarcity condition that we are having. If we can use this water in agriculture and alleviate our groundwater and or use it for groundwater artificial recharge, I think that will enhance our water security level. The last thing that we are having is the climate change. All the studies are indicating that our system will be hard hit by the impact of climate change in terms of increasing temperature, which means that we will be having more water demands, and increasing sea level, increasing sea level, which is going to be invading our groundwater, as well as the extreme events of droughts and floods that can destruct or make the situation is worse. This is in terms of water security. I think we can work on this. I think that's
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So there will not be much time to talk about the food security issue. But if I'm going to be talking about the food security, I think one thing that I can mention here is that food security has four dimensions. As everybody knows, we are talking about availability, stability, nutrition value, and affordability. I think we are talking here only about the availability. Now, availability for the GCC countries is relying on three sources. The first one is local production. The second one is imports, and the third one is agro investment. Each one of those will take a long time to talk about, but let me focus only on the local production, because that's what helps. This is what is really concerned with our water resources. Now, As I said from the beginning, that the majority of our groundwater are actually fossil groundwater, and these are being used and mined for local production, which is unsustainable because once the groundwater is depleted, these investments have to go somewhere else. We have to produce. We have to have a certain amount of food production locally, and this has to be done in a most efficient method using modern agricultural system, and we have to leave the traditional agricultural systems. And I think there is a major move now in the Gulf toward this end. If we can move towards these hydroponics and aquaponics and all these things, we can really produce, but we can never finish or fulfill our food security issue in terms of availability. The other thing that I think we can really work on is looking at the demand side of food security. We have two issues that we have to really tackle in the GCC. The first one is overnutrition.
1 minute.
Sorry?
Maximum 1 minute.
Okay. We have two issues that we really have to address, and instead of looking at the supply side by local production and import and agro investment, we have to look at the other side, which is the demand side. And the demand side, we have two issues that we have to really address, and we have to address, very quickly because they are becoming, exacerbating the situation. The first one is the overnutrition that we have, and the second one is food losses and food waste. If we can work on these, I think the situation will become much better, and I think there is a lot of work to be done on the demand side more than the supply side. I'm sorry because of the time, but I hope I have given the main ideas of the water security and the food security in the GCC.
Thank you very much, Professor. You made it very clear that regardless of economic success in many other sectors, water security is cross-cutting to every country everywhere in the world. And I commend you on the efforts that your country is making.